This is the bee extracting honey from the bees. Isn't that grand? I'm sure it will be when we have lots of honey for the winter.
All in all, we got about 4 supers of honey off of the hives. We actually did not extract all of it. We started running out of room to store it, so I got very selective about what frames we were extracting, and we left about 13 or 14 frames in the supers. I had returned the supers to the hives. There was a few where we had pulled a couple of frames out of this hive or a couple out of that. So I had to piecemeal it back together and put those back to the original hives. But there was no need to put it on in cleaning mode. Cleaning mode is where you put an inner cover on, a spacer, and then you put the honey super on and they clean it up. They rob it out. But these were actually being returned to the bees for them to refill, as we approach the fall. There was, however, one exception. I intend to put a honey super on our nucleus, freshly promoted to full hive status, and they're not ready for it yet. Rather than just clean it out, or rather than try to put it in mothballs or storage, I figured the best thing to do would be just drop it on one of the hives and let the bees tend to it. Generally, the best caretakers for bee equipment are the bees themselves. There's some exceptions. If you put too much on there and there's not enough bees to tend to it, you can end up with a situation where wax moths or hive beetles kind of run rampant. But these hives were strong enough to handle a little extra room. I had put a couple of deep empty supers with a couple of deep frames on a couple of these hives, just so that they weren't so overcrowded during the extraction process. So it was time to remove those. That one I had already pulled the frames out of, but I needed to actually pull the super. The one on the end, I had stuck most of the frames in, and I was going to get some drawn frames out of that and move that over to our nucleus hive so that they were a 10-frame hive. I figured I'd take care of a lot of these maintenance items now because the bee yard was about to turn into mayhem. I was going to bring out, the cappings, the extractor, and everything else for them to clean out. And, at that point in time, it is just crazy land. So we want to get all these little maintenance items started before we do that. So I put a few frames on to give to our nucleus hive last week. And boy, they drew them out. They put honey in them. 1 week. They were going to town on them. But I did promise our little nucleus hive I'd upgrade them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Today's No Smoke Saturday. Doesn't make the bees happy. So this is the feeder box I had in there. Ugly end frame. Now we have some fresh new frames complete with nectar. They will continue to grow into their brave new world here. It's an official 10-frame hive. During the extraction process, we end up with a lot of very wet cappings that have to be dealt with. First, you drain them into a pan, and then you put them in a bundle of cheesecloth over a bucket until all of the honey content is drained out. At that point, that and all the equipment goes back to the bee yard. You don't want them drowning in it. You don't want it too wet, but once most of the honey's drained out, they'll come out and they'll just take care of any little residue that's left on anything. It's really amazing how well they cleaned out the extractor. There's some cappings, obviously, but if you look down to the bottom, there's not a oops, let's try to focus here. Not a drip of honey left in this thing. It's just cleaned. I mean, we'll now scrub it down and put it into storage, but why let that residue go to waste? Give it back to the bees. It's supper time, girls. Nice, tasty capping wax. Thoroughly drained, but there's still honey on it. Enjoy. I'd say they like it. And as the feeding frenzy starts, we bid you adieu from Buzz Park until next week. Nice treat for a hot day.